Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and we're producing this episode for Forbes, where I'm a contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. Our guest today is Dan Clark, the author, the Hall of Fame speaker, the space traveler, and social entrepreneur. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Devin. This truly is an honor.
Well, the honor is all ours. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. I know you're extremely busy. Now, one of the most exciting stories that you've shared with me and over the years that I've had the opportunity to get to know you is your story of going into space. Tell us about your experience there.
I think the appropriate place to start, Devin, in that answer, based on social entrepreneurship, is that doesn't happen to a whole lot of folks. So most of the time people say, how did you pull that off, before I get into the explanation of this extraordinary experience. I've volunteered my time for the United States military as a professional speaker and entertainer since July of 2001. So I've literally given hundreds and hundreds of speeches. I visited our troops in the AOR area of responsibility, Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, across the globe multiple times, and I've always volunteered my time. So when I'm through speaking, they always say, a commander, a four-star general will say, gosh, what could we do for you? And I'm like, I want to ride an F-16. I want to fly with the Thunderbirds. I want to fly an F-4. I went up in a B-2. I've flown all the fighter jets, all the bombers in the United States Air Force, 6 F-16s. I've had an incredible experience. So I run into a general who was a former commander at Air University. Long story shorter, would you come and speak to our troops? Yeah, what can I do for you? I want to go up on a U-2 reconnaissance aircraft, because he was the commander at Beale Air Force Base outside of Sacramento, California. He says we can do that. So on October 22nd, 2010, I had a full day of training. October 23rd, I went up and soared to the edge of space in a U-2 reconnaissance aircraft. Because it's a classified mission, I can only tell you that at 70,000 feet above the Earth's surface, you see 2/3 of the state of California. At 80,000 feet, you see mapped outlines of America. And at 90,000 feet, you actually feel like you can reach out and touch the face of God. It was a spiritual experience I wish everyone could have. So for almost 5 hours, I sat in the sounds of silence, looking at the curvature of the Earth, gazing into the endless blackness of space. I could see where the blue turned to black, pondering eternity and how I fit in. And when I landed, what occurred to me, Devin, is that every single human being needs to become a social entrepreneur. By definition, science and the emotional side of social entrepreneurship. In other words, we better lead a life of significance. We better do everything in our power to make a difference. And that comes from focusing in on what matters most, and what matters most is what lasts the longest. And so from that moment on, my entire perspective on life and living has started with, we're more than mere mortal beings living on a small planet for a short season. And if that offends anybody's religious tradition or theological tendencies, I don't apologize, because when you're up that high, you realize that we are interconnected and we are governed by a set of laws. So the goal is not to obey the law of man or to obey a person. The goal is to obey the law. And if we understand how the universe has been organized and take it from a sports perspective, in order for you to win the game, you need to play by the rules. In order to play by the rules, you need to know what the rules are. And that's where I came up with my newest book, The Art of Significance, Achieving the Level Beyond Success. I challenged the 12 most common principles of success, threw them under the bus, and I replaced them with what I call the 12 highest universal laws of life-changing leadership, which focus our attention on all of us becoming a social entrepreneur, meaning let's find the real needs and galvanize every creative person we know and all the resources possible to achieve our goals, our highest purposes, so we don't die with our music still in us. That is the art of significance.
Well, I think that's a great way to introduce this discussion. I appreciate you sharing that. Of course, everyone is jealous of that opportunity, but you earned that in a meaningful way. Now, Dan, you gave us 5 tips for today that we could talk through, and I think these are wonderful tips. Your first tip was the suggestion that we move from success to significance. You talk about the dimension beyond achieving success. Tell us more about why and how.
Well, I've always been the disruptor. I've always taken pride in challenging the status quo. And When I work with a company and team building, it's all about creating a culture of excellence, something that perpetuates excellence so people are attracted to us instead of us recruiting employees or teammates. People are knocking on our doors. They want to be part of our significance, part of our community of significance. And so with all due respect to Jim Collins, who's a great professor, and I've been on the program with him many times, in his book, Good to Great, about 50% of his examples of great organizations were obsolete within 9 years after publication. It came out in 2001. You know, where's Circuit City? Where's Borders? Where's Blockbuster? The list goes on. Where's Fannie Mae? And so what he did was he identified the qualities that made these organizations great, but what he failed to also identify were those qualities that these organizations also shared who did not make the leap from good to great and eventually led to their demise. And so in that understanding and that maverick outlaw personality that I bring to the table, I started thinking about that there has to be something beyond success. And 3 examples come to mind quickly. I played football for 4 examples. I played football for 13 years. I was paralyzed in a tackling drill, went to 16 doctors, paralyzed for 14 months. The doctors told me I would never get any better. And as I started to get better, I was asked to speak. And now that I've recovered, the most frequently asked question is, what took you so long? And I laugh and I think, yeah, okay, that's a great question. The reason why I stayed paralyzed for 14 months was because I was asking the wrong questions. I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. And once we answer why, figured out the how-to is pretty simple. So second example, one of my teammates was drafted into the National Football League in the 2nd round. And after 4 years in the league at the top of his game as a superstar, one day he walks out of practice, quits, never to play again. Why? He loved being a football player, but he hated playing football. He loved the celebrity perks and the fame and fortune that allowed him to live this life we call success. Successful, that all of us pursue, keeping up with the Joneses, the car, the house, the job title, the salary. But because his inner voice and his true purpose in life was misaligned with who he was and what he really did for a living, he would never enjoy this life of significance, and he would die with his music still in him. So successful people get what they want, but those of us who are striving to live lives of significance actually want what we get at the end of the day. So as I said, we don't die with our music still in us. Third example, from a personal perspective. We all have children. I knew a young girl, beautiful, talented, smart, sassy. She was an extraordinary singer-songwriter. And she wrote music with some of the biggest names in country music. Every time she went to Nashville, she was an overnight celebrity. She was a daylight celebrity. Every person who wrote music and performed it in country music wanted to write with her. Consequently, the lead singing bad boys of the band were attracted to her, and consequently, she was attracted to them. As a conservative friend, I felt compelled to counsel her. I said, you have everything you need to get what you want, but at some point, don't you want to pause long enough to evaluate and make sure you want what you get so you don't die with your music still in you? Yeah, water off a duck's back. My counsel fell on deaf ears until one day I had an epiphany. I said, you're like a dog chasing cars. She says, what? I said, yeah, you're like a dog chasing cars. If the dog catches the car, what is she going to do with the car when she catches it? Just let it drag her down a road she had not intended and leave her perhaps, piled up on the side of the road, beat up emotionally, physically, left in divorce because her core values did not align with her main squeeze. The bells and whistles went off. She stopped dating the bad boys of the band. That's not a moral judgment. That's a classic example of we better align who we are with what we do. And all the money in the world that can make a person successful. All the information in the world is going to make a person successful. It's like the guy who has 3 PhDs, one in philosophy, one in psychology, one in sociology, doesn't have a job, but at least he can explain why. However, if we take our success with the commitment to transform it into significance, that's when we automatically turn success into significance. We automatically become social entrepreneurs. And the 4th example makes sense. And the 4th example ties you into my next question because I don't want to babble too long without taking a breath. What would be the next
tip? Your next tip was to define purpose, right? So tell us about why we need to define our purpose. It must relate to this notion that you've been talking about.
Well, purpose is our bottom line. When our why is larger than our why not, we will persevere. So in my book, The Art of Significance, Achieving the Level Beyond Success, Law number 2 is classic. Exercise perseverance beyond patience. Well, the debatable principle of success that I promised is patience. We've all been taught patience is a virtue. Not always. Patience allows you to never begin. Patience allows you to mindlessly wait your turn, believing this is the hand I've been dealt, this is the cross I must bear. I can't do anything about it. It was meant to be. No, no, no. Perseverance is patience with a purpose, where we proactively and intentionally take our turn because we know why we should. So the why is our motivator. In law number 1, I tell my parable of the kite. And I love parables. And if I'm known for anything from a famous perspective, it's my involvement as the primary contributing author to all the Chicken Soup for the Soul books and my parable of the kite. Father's in a park flying a kite with his little boy. He says, what holds the kite up in the sky? His little boy says, the wind. His dad says, the wind doesn't hold the kite up, the string does. Confused, his little boy says, no, Daddy, the string doesn't hold the kite up, the string holds the kite down. His dad says, if you think so, let go of the string. Little guy lets go of the string, and sure enough, his kite is blown from the sky and is taken wherever the wind wants to take it. And the little kid frantically starts chasing the string. He finally steps on the string, reconnects, commits to tightly holding onto that string again. And of course, the kite once again dances in the cloudless sky and becomes what it was meant to be, a kite. In this parable of the kite, the metaphor is so extraordinary. The kite represents our dream, our goal, our desired results. The string represents the rules, the governing principles, the 12 highest universal laws of life-changing leadership that I illuminate in my book, The Art of Significance. The child holding tightly onto the string represents his obedience to his dad because his dad's standing there. Interesting. The wind represents our opposition in all things. In order to appreciate the light, we must have darkness. In order to appreciate mercy, we must have justice. The opposition is the economy, lack of capital investment, negative coworkers. We can line up a giant list of the opposition. The opposition in all things is represented by the wind. The kid letting go of the string represents his being enticed by the temptations and distractions of the world. Kicking it back in gear and chasing the string represents his recommitment to obedience fueled by his conscience. Now, I believe that every person born into this world was born with a conscience, an inherent ability to discern truth from error, right from wrong, which means our conscience will never fail us. Only our desire to follow it decreases as we continue to do the wrong thing. So if you and I walk into the same room and it stinks so bad that we're repulsed, our eyes start to bleed, our noses start to ring, our ears start to throw up on themselves, and we stay in that room for 5 minutes, suddenly it doesn't stink anymore. It becomes the new norm. We become desensitized past the point of feeling. Our conscience will never fail us. Only our desire to follow it decreases as we continue to do the wrong thing. So one of the things I always point out in my speeches, in my book, we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most, which means if we hang around with 5 broke people, we're going to become the 6th. If we hang around with 5 whining, negative people, complaining, blaming people, we're going to become the 6th. However, if we think like a social entrepreneur and realize wealth flows through you, not to you, which means you can get anything in this life that you want if you're willing to help enough other people get what they want, you'll understand that we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings and allow our conscience to be our guide. So the little kid chases the string because his conscience kicks back in. And now once he catches the string again, the good news, no matter how many times we've let go of the string in our personal relationships, in our professional endeavors, we can always catch the string. And now the little kid standing in the park by himself represents no longer is he obeying his dad. He understands that anyone who comes into his life and entices him or influences him to let go of the string is not a good influence. And now he obeys the higher law, not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of himself. That's a long answer to your simple question, what is purpose? But once we understand the rules of engagement, and we commit to choosing, using our own free will and choice to choose to obey, not because you tell me to, not choosing to obey someone, but in choosing to obey a higher law, suddenly that enlightens us to the true purposes of life. Make a difference, leave a legacy, become a social entrepreneur, and through the law of attraction, which is defined as we attract what we believe we deserve, we validate that because we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most, we can accomplish everything we desire so we don't die with our music still in us. Question number 3.
Okay. Now let's talk about knowing the laws of leadership. I think that there is, I think your point here is that we have to know what to do before we can do it, isn't it?
Yes, sir. It's knowing the whole truth. First time I had an opportunity to visit Iraq and Afghanistan, Kuwait, all the troops, it was in 2005. I was there for 16 days. I spoke 23 times on 12 bases, and out on the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carried over 30,000 of our bravest men and women. That one moment in time changed me forever. When I came back, I was doing all the talk shows, the national shows. And I get on one show, which is, left out of the conversation, which everybody would recognize. And one of the co-hosts continuously asked me negative questions to solicit a negative response. So our Iraqi policy is failing, so they really didn't want us there. So how did you find the morale of our troops? I'm like, seriously? Well, because our Iraqi policy is failing and we weren't able to create a coalition, blah, blah, blah. And finally I said, stop it, I've had enough. I said, you are asking the wrong questions. You are asking negative questions to solicit a negative response, and that's unacceptable. I refuse to let you do that. And he was indignant. He says, what do you mean? You're suggesting that there's no integrity in our media? And I said, oh, no. We have a checks and balance system. We know we can trust you. But you're asking a negative question to solicit a negative response, and even though the response is true, it's a negative true. He says, what do you mean? I said, is Michael Jackson one of the greatest songwriters, recording artists, entertainers of forever? Yeah, I've seen him in concert twice live. Is Michael Jackson one of the weirdest ducks that's ever been born on any planet? Yeah, both answers are completely true, positive or negative. And he says, well, the election over there in Iraq, there were 11 explosions. And I said, see, there you have it. On January 31st, we had the first free election in the history of Iraq. And when I got there in February, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, I met those who conducted the elections. They showed me the plat map in Saddam's palace downtown Baghdad. They showed me that there were 5,578 polling stations in a country of Iraq the size of our state of California, and only 11 explosions. And what did we hear about over here in our media? Only the 11 explosions. So I took him by surprise. He was dumbfounded. And I said, what we call it is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is based on the personality, the political, social, economic influences, sexual orientation. You can add up any part of what makes a person's character, and you can identify why that person invites the certain and specific guests on his or her show on TV, and how they only validate with true information their opinion and their side of the story. So when we start talking about laws, we start talking about seek the whole truth instead of trying instead of believing everything that you think. Bottom line, some things are true whether you believe them or not. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but nobody's entitled to the wrong facts. And we shouldn't believe everything that we think, so we need to look on both sides of the wall before we make our decisions. He who speaks first always loses in a negotiation. We know that, and we bring that up in my book. But the classic example is one side of my hand is painted white, the other side is painted blue. I'm having a conversation with the daughter over curfew, and her side I say, what color is my hand? She says white. My color is blue. Who's right? We both are, depending on what side of the issue of curfew we're on. So what we have to do is come on either side and each other side of the issue before we make the final judgment, which focuses on not who's right, but what's right. Give the glory to who deserves the glory. And it, again, finely tunes our purpose so we can focus in on the why. And once we answer why, figuring out the how to is pretty simple. And once we commit to obeying the rules of the universe and abiding by the 12 highest universal laws that I illuminate in the Art of Significance, it makes getting our increase in achieving our desired results simple. Not easy, but simple.
Dan, that's a great and powerful insight. Your fourth point was that we should attract the right people. And I think you've got some ideas on how we attract the right people, because that is such an important part of being a successful social entrepreneur.
Yeah, let's drill deep as bottom as low as we can. The foundation of entrepreneurship is there's no such thing as a financial crisis, only an idea crisis. Ideas create income. So what we have to do is understand what my colleague and great dear friend, we have the same publisher in Penguin Random House, Simon Sinek, said. The goal is not to do business with everybody who wants what you have. The goal is to do business only with those who believe what you believe, so they choose you, not just someone who does what you do. So at some point, we've got to attract the people that believe what we believe. And in the law of attraction, we attract what we believe we deserve. So we need to distill it down. In my book, I distill it down into energy, vibration, and frequency of that energy and vibration. And the law of resonance, as we're studying, I distill the law of attraction down to simple terms, but I also introduce it through my law number 6, which is focus on winning instead of team. That's intriguing to me. I love asking my audiences, the military, Fortune 100 companies. It doesn't matter the size of my audience. I love asking how many of you agree that it's all about team, and everyone raises their hand. And in my maverick personality, I say, wrong answer. They usually chuck, and I say, it's not all about team. Teams lose. Whoever said it's not whether you win or lose, the count's probably lost. Are there teams going bankrupt right now as we sit on this interview at Forbes? Yeah, and they have a team. You'll hear consultant after consultant show up and say, there's no I in team. Well, tongue in cheek, there's no I in sucks either. There's no I in loser. There's no I in bankrupt. But if you want to play that game, there's 2 I's in winning. And the first I represents independent, individual preparation. I've been in Super Bowl locker rooms, NCAA championship locker rooms right before kickoff, and the silent prayer of every athlete is, please don't let me be the weak link. Don't let me be the wuss. Don't let them run 95 yards through my 3 feet of real estate to score the winning touchdown and defeat my team. Please don't let me be the weak link. So in law number 6, I've distilled building a winning team, not a team, building a winning team into what I call the 10 commitments. I, number 1, the first I in winning, independent individual preparation, distills and illuminates the first 6 of 10 commitments. Clarity, who are you really? Character, it's what we do when no one's around. Competency, yeah, you need to know the playbook. Consistency, I've got to be the same off stage as I am on stage, or there's no attraction. There's no reason for people to want to be on in my tribe or on my team, and they don't know what I believe because I don't show it in my actions. Number 5, competitiveness. You don't compete it against others, you compete against yourself. And number 6, cause. Whoa. Once we answer why, figuring out the how-to is pretty simple. Knowledge is power, but knowledge has no heart. We don't learn to know, we learn to do. The second I in winning represents interdependent collaboration, which is a commitment to the last 4 of the 10 commitments. Chemistry. At the end of the day, it's not what you do, it's with whom you do it. Back to the law of attraction. I don't know if any of your listeners or your viewers have horses, but when you put a hard-to-catch horse in the same field with an easy-to-catch horse, most of the time you end up with 2 hard-to-catch horses. When you put a healthy child in the same room with a sick child, most of the time you end up with 2 sick children. Moral of the story, to be disciplined, healthy, and significant, we need to associate with the disciplined, healthy, and significant. Commitment number 8 is contribution. Give it everything you got when less would be sufficient. Commitment number 9 is collaboration and cooperation. And commitment number 10 is conclusion. Anybody can make a presentation. The idea is to conclude. So yes, the conclusion is it is about team. We know that. They don't give Super Bowl rings out one at a time. But the teams that win have the greatest number of individual I players on them. If your viewers and listeners are interested, I love to give away a free copy of my 10 commitments with paragraph descriptions on what they mean so they can actually look them up and define them and use them in their team building exercises. And I also like to throw in my 3 solutions to stress management. So if they wanted to text 435-633-9160, they'll get a free download of my 10 commitments to building this winning team and my solutions to stress management. Again, 435-633-9160. A shameless advertisement that I believe we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. And I want to keep in touch with your listeners and viewers. This is an opportunity of a lifetime, Devin. You're awesome.
Well, thank you, Dan. Those are great insights, and I appreciate you taking us through all that. I want to just tap into some additional personal insights. Dan, you are revered by people around the world. You are a role model to so many. Who do you look up to as a role model? Who inspires you?
You know what? I've thought about this a lot because, you and I aren't just professional colleagues, but we're friends. And I watch how you interview people, and you're always interested in what motivates them, who motivates the motivator. And you know what? It's my dad. I'm a songwriter. I've got gold records in country music. You know, a couple of tongue-in-cheeks that your listeners would love. Had I shot you when I met you, I'd be out of jail by now. Yeah, that's a favorite at weddings. My wife ran off with my best friend, and I'm going to miss him dearly. But on a serious note, I've got some great songs and some real gold records. The best song I've ever written was inspired by my dad. He used to get a lot of radio play. It's called Special Man. Lyrical hook. Any male can be a father, but it takes a special man to be a dad. And my dad is the one that really helped me coin the phrase, you know, wealth flows through you, not to you. He always taught me that the purpose of a leader is to grow more leaders, even though that's an Air Force general's quote. My dad served in the Air Force during World War II, and I idolized my dad. In fact, if I may share with your viewers, many people ask me how I coined my phrases, how I came up with my quotes that no matter what your past has been, you have a spotless future. Well, when I returned from space, many memories, a plethora of memories just flooded my mind and connected my head with my heart. And I created one-liners that have been pillars of strength for many, many people. And I get a lot of comments, and I love to quote them. Because when I landed from space, I realized the significance of time. And I miss my dad. He passed away after a battle, 6.5-year battle of cancer. And I share stories about the day he passed and all the things he's taught me. But in retrospect, my dad illuminated on a daily basis that today you've never been this old before. And today you'll never be this young again. So right now matters, and every right now matters, which means you can't always control what happens, but you can always control what happens next. And 2 months before my dad passed away, he gathered the family together and he said, "What are all of you learning from this?" Well, obviously I had to coin a phrase, pain is a signal to grow, not to suffer. Once you learn the lesson, the pain teaches you, the pain goes away. So in life, there's no mistakes, only lessons. But still people say, so is there an experience that you remember that was the foundation of when your dad became your hero? Yeah. I'm 12 years of age. We're standing in line to purchase some tickets to go to the circus. Finally, there's only one family between myself and my father and the ticket counter. One family, 8 children, probably all under the age of 12. One could sense they didn't have a lot of money. Their clothes were not expensive clothes. I didn't see any little animals anywhere. But they were very, very clean clothes. And there was a lot of pride in the family. And the children were well behaved. They weren't running all around. They were standing 2 by 2 in line, holding hands. They looked like the modern day Von Trapp family singers. Visualize this little tribe behind dad and mom. The mother had a hold of her husband's hand as proud as she could be. She's looking up at him like, gosh, you're my knight in shining armor. He's looking back at her like, yeah, you got that right. With all the pride he could muster, he steps up to the ticket lady. He steps up to the counter and he says, "Excuse me, ma'am, I'd like to purchase 8 children's tickets and 2 adult tickets so I can take my family to the circus." Ticket lady quotes the price. Man's wife lets go of her husband's hand. Her countenance changes. Her head drops. The man's lip starts to quiver. Again, he leans over and again he asks for the purchase price of the tickets. Again, the ticket lady quotes the price. Turns out the man didn't have enough money. How was he supposed to turn and tell 8 little kidlets that he couldn't afford to take them to the circus? Seeing what was going on, my father reached in his pocket. He pulled out a $20 bill, dropped it on the cement. We were not wealthy in any sense of the word. My dad knew that it was important for him to do everything he could to keep that father's pride intact, especially in front of his children. So my dad stooped down, picked up the $20 bill, tapped the man on the shoulder, and he says, "Excuse me, sir, this fell out of your pocket." The man knew what was going on. He squeezed tightly onto that $20 bill, looks my dad square in the eyes, and with tears streaming down both of his cheeks, he says, "Thank you so much, sir. This means the world to me and my family." And my dad and I went back and got into the car. We didn't go to the circus that night. We eventually went to the circus, so we didn't do without. What's the message that I learned as a 12-year-old from my hero, my dad, who was the same on stage as he was off stage, who was the one who taught me no matter what your past has been, you have a spotless future? Well, I have a very wealthy uncle who would have accomplished the exact same goal. What's the matter? You can't afford to go to the circus? Let me sign the check. Stop the whole bus. Let's take the whole community on me. That's not service. That's selfishness. And it's amazing what can happen if we don't focus on who's right, but on what's right. Obey the law, not the person, and give the glory to who deserves the glory. Full circle, Devin. That's social entrepreneurship. Figuring out a way through the law of attraction to share our ideas and prove true that reason leads to conclusions, but it is emotion that leads to action. Reason leads to conclusions, but it is emotion that leads to action. When we can illuminate and create a culture of excellence in our organizations, by first and foremost identifying why our organization exists in the first place, and then attracting people to join us so that no matter what happens with the economy or the interest rates or our market share, we stay focused because we're there first and foremost to make a difference first, knowing that wealth flows through you, not to you. You know, I love quotes. My latest concoction ties a bow around our discussion so far. And that is, if you spend your day wondering if the glass is half empty or half full, you've missed the point. It's refillable. Thinking positively or thinking negatively doesn't fill up the glass. The pouring does.
Yes.
My dad used to always ask me, do you know enough right now? Do you have enough skills in your skill set to take action right now? And if so, then take action right now. It's easier to act your way into positive thinking than it is to think your way into positive action. It's not the sugar that makes the tea sweet, it's the stirring, it's the process. And so the concern I have whenever I'm interviewed, the concern is when I challenge people to buy my book, and please do, it'll change your life. I promise you, and besides, I need the money. It will transform your life from success to significance so you don't die with your music still in you. Because everything we can take with us when we die, I had aboard with me on that aircraft. Education, character, our convictions, and yes, I don't believe we lose our memories when we die. I believe we will be haunted or rewarded for eternity because our lives mattered. We focused in on what matters most, which is what lasts the longest, because the goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will. Social entrepreneurship 101.
Yeah, there you go. Now, Dan, you've hinted with the example of your father at why these things are important to you, but I think you and I share a common vision that these things are important. But I want to go back to your life experience. Why are they important to you? Dan, did I lose you? Dan, it seems I've lost you. Dan, I'm afraid we've lost you. I'm going to hope that we'll be able to get reconnected here in the next 60 seconds. And so I'm going to just offer up a couple of key Dan Clark facts for our audience while we hope you get reconnected. But the first Dan Clark fact is where you can find him. So you can find Dan Clark at danclark.com. Not a big surprise. You can learn more about him, his books, his speaking. You can all find that there. You can follow Dan on Twitter at Dan Clark Speak. Dan Clark Speak is Dan's Twitter handle. And Dan, of course, is a phenomenal speaker and full of insights. Let's hope he'll rejoin us here promptly and quickly, and we can wrap up this interview. We have just a few minutes more that we're hoping to get with Dan.
Hey,
Dan, you're back. Dan, we've been stalling, hoping you'd come back. So Dan, the question is, why is this important to you? That was the question that we were putting to you. We understand why social entrepreneurship is important. We understand why doing good is important. Why is it important to you? What in your life brings you to this?
Well, you know, when I was hurt and I started to get better, I was asked to speak. I was sponsored by Zig Ziglar into the National Speakers Association back in 1982. And I've been named one of the top 10 speakers in the world 2 different times, 1999 and again in 2015. Inducted in the National Speakers Hall of Fame. It sounds like I'm self-serving and braggadocio, but what I'm saying is that the reason why I've never missed a speech since 1982, when flights are canceled, I've rented a car, I've driven 7 hours one way to speak, isn't for some noble cause or for some award or recognition. It's because when I was hurt, when I was paralyzed, and my dream of playing professional football and professional baseball was taken away from me, I learned first and foremost, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you that matters. And I thought I was depressed when in reality, there's a giant difference between being depressed and being disappointed, huge difference between being depressed and being discouraged and being sad. And I needed someone to fire me back up again. And that's why I'm asked and called on so frequently by the United States military to come in and talk about resiliency and suicide prevention and sexual harassment, sexual assault, and creating a culture of excellence with strength and diversity, because I've been there and I've got the t-shirt. And every single time I speak and I'm invited to speak, I will show up with a customized speech. I always have a conference call with my meeting planners to find out what their needs are. And because I'm fresh, my message is always fresh, because I am, what's the next thing? Racing automobiles in Nürburgring, running the Olympic torch, serving on the Olympic committee. I've done all those things. Cool. But the bottom line reason why I do what I do is because I know, Devin, that there's at least one man and one woman in every one of my audiences who was hurting as badly as I was back in the day when I was paralyzed. And if I can say something, if we can engage in an exercise, if I can illuminate my expertise and my stories and through laughter and tears about leadership development, about transforming our lives from successful to significance, understanding that ART is an acronym: awareness, refinement, transformation, becoming aware of what we believe, refining that belief for a truer belief, a truer, higher exercise, and then to transform it through taking action. When I know that what I have to offer can transform lives and organizations, just maybe something I'll say will keep someone from killing himself because I was there. Maybe something that I say will keep someone from losing a job because of negligence or lack of ambition. Or they won't leave their spouse or significant other, and somehow I can resurrect that love, that feeling of joy and excitement that they once had, or they wouldn't be together. And I believe, as cheesy as it sounds, that one moment in time changes everything. No matter what your past has been, you have a spotless future. May I illuminate that with one of my favorite stories that everyone requests? I was on the program with the famous Henry Winkler, the Fonzie from Happy Days, clearly one of the funniest guys on our planet. He decides he wants to take some time off, treat himself to a matinee movie, so he slides in through the side exit door of the theater. And as Henry Winkler shuffles himself through the aisle, he finds himself a vacant seat. As Henry Winkler turns to sit down on the chair to look up at the movie screen, the little girl sitting right behind him smiles this giant smile, points her finger, and slowly says, "Fonzie." Henry Winkler immediately snaps into the Fonzie character from Happy Days. Swivels his hips, flips his hair, points his finger, says, "Hey, whoa." And the lady sitting next to the little girl passes out. Henry Winkler milks the moment. "Whoa, I thought this only happened on TV drama. Hey, how cool is this? Whoa." Yet a manager comes out, takes care of the woman's needs. She's lying in the aisle, cold pack on her forehead. She's asked one question: "Why did you pass out?" She said, "My little girl is autistic." And that is the very first word she has ever spoken in her entire life. Again, to reiterate, you can't always control what happens, but you can always control what happens next. And one of my best quotes that I've coined so far, which is fresh off the press: under pressure, you don't step up your game. You succumb to the level of your preparation, training, and practice, which means pressure is not something that is naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability. And when you know what you've been trained to do, there's never any question, which means you will willingly sweat more in peace so you can bleed less, or you will bleed less in war, with the guts to run towards the sound of the guns, not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of yourself, which means exhaustion is acceptable, falling is acceptable, puking is acceptable, crawling is acceptable, blood, sweat, and tears are acceptable, heartache and heartbreak, disappointment and discouragement are acceptable. But blaming, whining, complaining, and quitting are not. Which means if you're ever going to give up or quit, you will always quit during practice, never in a game. That's why we train and practice so hard. If you're not training and pushing yourself to your ultimate capacity and potential as a human being, right now, someone else, somewhere else is. And when you meet him, he will win. And because it's about winning, not just winning once, but winning, creating a legacy, creating that dynasty organization, we need to associate with the right people, attract the right people into our tribe who all believe in social entrepreneurship, which means when the water in the lake goes up, all the boats rise together. I want every single person who is in a decision-making position in your organization, HR, C-suite, CEO, to understand that when we commit your employees, your emerging leaders, your seasoned executives, whomever they may be, to living by, first studying, learning, but then living by the 12 highest universal laws of life-changing leadership. It's amazing what that alone does to transform your organization from a mindset perspective, now giving them the playbook so that as a NFL quarterback takes the field with his play sleeve, with his wrist coach, and the coach, the CEO, the HR manager, whomever is on the sideline with the situational awareness, when they know the situational awareness and it's signaled into the quarterback, he goes to his playbook, he goes to his play sleeve, he goes to his wrist coach and says, oh, law number 1 and law number 9 are the real-time solutions to what I'm dealing with right now in this crucial conversation. And 3 hours later, whoa, law number 1 and law number 7 and law number 12, forgiveness. You know, if you hold a grudge and remain angry, it's like you drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That's one of the 12 laws we got to dig into. In real time, you now have the resources and the tools to make real-time decisions based on the 12 highest irrefutable laws. And then as we drill deeper into those laws, it's amazing how we change our conversation and make sure that leadership becomes automatic, relationships become automatic, and love perpetuates our personal and professional lives.
So Dan, I appreciate you sharing those insights. Now, let's talk a little bit about one last thing. Last real question for you is, we ask all of our guests for an impact hack, and you've given us a lot of great insights already, but I wonder if you could give us one sort of bonus tip, one impact hack to help us do more good before we wrap up.
Off the cuff, Devin, maybe sales 101, the only place from which a person can grow is where he or she is. We have to go where they are physically and emotionally. Only there can we gently invite them to buy. Nobody likes to be sold, but everybody likes to buy. And based on that, the definition of sales is the transference of trust. So law number 4 in my book, The Art of Significance, Achieving the Level Beyond Success, is trust predictability beyond hope and faith. Think about it. French philosopher Pascal said, too many live their lives hoping to be happy, but because they only hope, they never really are. Dan Clark 6 and 2 thrown on top of that. Too many are waiting for someone to ask them and invite them to the senior prom, and they've never even taken the time to learn how to dance. Which means faith without works is not faith at all. Trusting predictability is what it's all about. So based on the first illuminated quote, the only place from which a person can grow is where he or she is, it's not only sales 101, it's customer service 101, it's parenting, teaching, coaching 101. So what we have to do is understand that the significant individuals in our lives, first and foremost, don't just find answers to the questions, they question the answers. So in life, it's always about asking the right questions. He or she who asks the question is always in control of the conversation. And he or she who's in control of the conversation controls the hearts and minds of the people. What we need to do when we tune out today is to amalgamate how we currently believe and transpose that into how a social entrepreneur always thinks. And that is, I'll find a niche, but I am not going to rely on anyone else, the government, or anyone else to crowdfund, to do anything other than what I'm willing to do on my own. And then through that law of attraction, people see that first and foremost, I'm the same off stage as I am on stage. I don't just practice what I preach only what I practice. So they need to join my tribe, and together we rise. So yes, it is about team, but the teams that win have the greatest number of individual I players on them. And so what we need to do is get ourselves right first, become an I player committing to all 10 commitments in law number 6, and then through the law of attraction, start attracting those who are also committed to abiding by those 10 commitments and creating a winning organization that's unstoppable, that makes a difference not just in our own lives, but in the lives of everyone whom we meet, and especially those whom we do not meet, who need us more badly than anyone else on the planet.
Dan, before you go, I want to give you one last chance to repeat your special offer so that everyone who's watching can take advantage of that generous offer.
All right, my website is danclark.com. My email address is dan@danclark.com. Please email me questions and let's keep in touch. I want you to join my community of significance. But if you want my free download of the intricate, detailed explanation of my 10 commitments to building a winning team and my 3 solutions, cognitive, emotional, and behavioral solutions to stress management, I want you to text 435-633-9160. Repeat, 435-633-9160. My Twitter handle is Dan Clark Speak. And you can find me on Facebook. I only have 9 friends. I'm supposed to be an international celebrity. My friends flip me crap, and I only have 9 friends. Please like me on Facebook. And that's Dan Clark or Dan Clark Speak on my Facebook or my fan page. And again, I sound like I'm groveling, but I really am serious about wanting to keep in touch with your viewing audience. Devin, I know whom you attract. I know the quality of your associations off air. And I take a lot of pride in being part of your circle of influence and being part of your tribe. I want your listeners to know what a class human being you are. And although they only see your handsome mug and hear your voice, you're exactly the same on screen as you are off screen. And I take a lot of pride in calling you my friend. Thanks, good brother. God bless our troops. God bless America.
Thank you, Dan. We wish you every success in the great work that you're doing to inspire people to do more good.
Again, my book, The Art of Significance, Achieving the Level Beyond Success. And you can get it on Amazon.com or look on my offerings as we will put together a 3-day retreat where we can gather in the mountains of Utah and really dive deeper, drill deeper into the 12 laws so that guaranteed at the end of the 3 days, we are never the same. More fired up to be socially conscious, and become those consummate social entrepreneurs that the world really needs to make the world run in the way that it's intended.
All righty, Dan. Let's do some good.
Thanks.